Hello, this video is going to talk you through this exercise 7.3 where you're going to write a program to find the average of the numbers stored in the New York temps.txt, and we're going to use floating point numbers, which means that we are going to use decimals or doubles. I opened up this environment. You want to click on this replit. We are not going to use the automatic code generator. We're going to use this other environment. They have the file already loaded for you with all the temperatures, and then we have main, and they've already preloaded a few things. So first of all, there really is no file path because you're working in the same directory as the data file. Okay, if you're working offline or on a different compiler, you're going to have to make sure that this text file is in the same folder as your main program. We are opening the file to read, and that was, if we went back and we take back a look at the lesson slides, we are basically going to be repeating this code right here that's on this slide. Okay, that is, we're going to open a file for reading. We're going to read in one line at a time. We're going to use a while loop to read that, and then when we're all done processing, we're going to close that file. Okay, so this is the model that you want to use. Okay, and then we get the first line of the file by reading it in, and then our code, since we want to read in lines of code until the end of the file, we do want to use a while loop. And so as we're working through this program, we are going to say while, if I can type, and if I can do this successfully. Okay, I'm having problems typing, so you know what, I'm going to go back to our lesson actually, and you guys do this frequently. I'm going to just copy some of the code from our lesson there and bring it into Replit. And I don't need all of this code because I've already opened the file right here, so I can delete that, and I've already read the first line, so I don't need these 2 lines of code here. But while there is a line, I'm going to print the line, and then it's going to read in the next line. Now, so this is actually a really good idea just to pull this over and practice this one, or copy and paste it over, because I can just see if my code actually runs then real quick to see if it's actually reading in those temperatures. So if I run it, I am successful. I read in the temperatures. So don't forget to go back to the lesson and feel free to copy these pieces of code over. They've kind of created it that way, so you can do that. Also, back here on the lesson page are the step-by-step instructions for why that works. This is a good section to review before you actually take that quiz. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and go back to our code that I'm working on, my goal is to add up all of these numbers and find their average. And so this is actually just going to review the fact that we need to create some additional variables. I want to create a summing variable or a total variable, and I'm going to give it an initial value of 0.0 so that it's a double. And then I need a counting variable, which is going to be my number of temperatures. And so I want to just keep track of a count, and so I'm going to let that equal 0. Okay. It's been a while since we've worked with counting and summing variables. A counting variable literally is just going to count, and I want to count basically how many pieces of data that I have in here, and so that is the number of lines that I have. I really don't need this print line right here because that was just to see if the file was working, so I'm going to basically comment that out, and then I want to count every time I have processed a line. So I'm going to count equals count plus 1. So I'm just adding 1 for every piece of code, every piece of data in that file. The other thing that I want to do is I want to total them up. So I'm going to total them by using total equals total plus. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because it is the line that I read in from the file, because that's what we printed over here. But remember, that line is a string, and so I have to convert it. I don't want to convert it to an int, which is what we use frequently, but I want to convert it to a decimal, and so float or casting it as a double would be what I want to do. That's what I want to process inside my loop. I have to keep the new read line here because that's reading in the next piece of data. When I'm done reading in all the data, that's when this statement turns to false, and then I want to find the average. And so the average of these is going to be, and I always would encourage you to use appropriately named variables. So average temps is going to equal the total of all our temperatures divided by the count variable. Because this is a double, it's divided by an integer. A double divided by an integer should return the appropriate value. And then I want to go ahead and print out that. I would always recommend that you use a prompt, so average temp, and then we are going to print the variable. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. We're going to use concatenation. Remember, that's what that's called. Now that is a decimal, so I want to convert it to a string so then I can appropriately print that out. I don't know. I actually did not double check the output for this before I ran it. I should have. I'm just going to cross my fingers right now that it works. It says 46.244. If I actually look at all the temperatures, 46 probably won't be too far off, so I'm going to trust that that's okay, and we're going to call this a wrap. That is exercise 7.3. Don't forget that we did have to close the file at the end. Let's see, I said that's a wrap, and then I kind of lied. We're going to go back up here. Remember to comment in your name, and then the exercise, and then the date, etc. at the top. And this exercise was 7.3, code practice, and then the date, whatever the date is, and then it averages the rainfall data in a text file. So give me just a short description of what the program does. Now it's a wrap.